Hello everybody, welcome back to Cryptoria. This is another English episode. So for the English episodes, we are on another interview episode. And the interview episode is designed for invite the core members from well-known project or foundation. So guess who we invite today? We invited David Hawig, the Director of Ecosystem Growth of Web3 Foundation. You definitely will say, what Web3 Foundation? Who they are on behalf? Okay, this is two well-known projects. It's Polkadot and Kusama. Okay, so David, would you mind give us some head up about who you are and what Web3 Foundations and how you guys founding the Polkadot and Kusama, those two well-known projects?
Yeah, I'm David Hawig, in the space for quite some time, have some early Bitcoin experience and so on, but really got in the space when I had my own company. And we started to work together 2016 was this, with a lot of blockchain projects. There was this ICO hype. There were a couple of big projects that supported us, and I basically discovered, I really want to work in this space. After receiving one of the very first grants from Web3 Foundation, I decided to join Web3 Foundation full-time. And now I have been working at the foundation for 6 years, mostly responsible for our grants program, but in general now also growing the ecosystem, I would say. As you pointed out, we are not necessarily supporting everyone in the space. Our main focus is Polkadot and Kusama, and we are named Web3 Foundation because Gavin Wood, he came originally up with the term Web3, and that's why I think we were one of the first that used this term before it was super popular and basically used for everything. Yeah.
Right. So actually, could you tell us, what's your day-to-day job? Since you are the director of ecosystem growth, will you talk to different projects, founders, institutional players? What's your day-to-day job?
Yeah, my day-to-day job is usually having a lot of back-to-back calls with basically a lot of teams, institutions, companies that are interested in the space. My role is, so right now Web3 Foundation is basically, we help to coordinate things, we help to structure things, we help all these decentralized entities to better work together. But I would say our ultimate goal is basically to kind of get rid of ourselves and make sure the ecosystem can survive and thrive without us. That's our role as Web3 Foundation. And we obviously did the initial token sale. We have some internal funding that we can provide. Then there's also the on-chain treasury that is a DAO, a decentralized organization that can also support teams.
So for the Web3 Foundations, when you say your mission, your ultimate goals, it reminds me for the Ethereum Foundation. I think every foundation wants to know, maybe someday foundations can go back and the whole ecosystem, they can organically grow themselves.
Yeah. So I would say we always had a strong focus on decentralization, similar to Ethereum, where our founder is coming from and so on. So we always try to basically make sure that this entire network functions without us, that it's fully decentralized. And we have this on the technical side where we have different implementers actually implementing the code. But on the other side, we also try to do this when it comes to BD, marketing, investment, and so on. And this is something nobody has really done yet to a certain degree. So there are a lot of challenges, but I'm optimistic that we will get there.
So as we just mentioned about Polkadot and Kusamas, so just for someone who, if them never heard about either of them, so how would you explain the difference in the way that doesn't, put them say, that is too boring?
So right now I would describe them that Polkadot is the network that aims to be the underlying network for serious companies, for established businesses, and Web2 companies that now want to integrate Web3 and so on. Whereas Kusama is more this crazy canary network where we try different things, we have different initiatives, more cyberpunk, basically, like a little bit like the original Ethereum founders and so on, where you didn't have necessarily this core product focus and more business-oriented focus that you have right now and a lot of networks.
Well, so that means if I want to build in some serious project, like I want to bring some Web2, then I'll go find Polkadot. And if I want to run some experiments, and I just think those experiments are so cool, I just want to say whether it can put the human's edge, then I'll go to find the Kusama.
Yeah, exactly. If it's more about research, trying something new, then go to Kusama. But if you have a product in mind, you want to get users, you want to get constant income, you want to have a reliable, scalable network that doesn't have any issues, then Polkadot is the way to go.
So, the reason why we invite you to our show is because we just started our Layer 1 series. And then on the first episode, we basically have a recap on all those major protocols at the first place. And apparently, Polkadot is one of it. And then our listeners ask us, oh yes, there's a Polkadot there. How are they doing? It seems that they don't have much activity in the Chinese-speaking community. So can you guys ask them how they are doing and is any update? So my question is, there's a lot of competitors now, right? So you mentioned that Ethereum, Solana's, now you got Sway. So how would you convince the founders or developers that, Polkadot will be better for them than they go to other ecosystems? How will you pitch them?
Yeah. Something that Polkadot still offers, and we are still pretty much focused on, is besides decentralization and reliability and so on, is actually scalability. So we are one of the only sharded networks compare out there. We can actually handle all these transactions. So that's not super relevant right now if there's super low demand or no real enterprises on chain and so on. But where we actually see a great fit is right now with all these enterprise customers that actually want to integrate Web3 for the first time. And basically, they have certain user metrics, they have certain transactions that they immediately need, and their sharding helps a lot. And also this long-term vision by our founder, Gavin Wood, to make it even more scalable. We think it's not possible to achieve this basically with one computer or multiple computers all checking exactly the same data and so on. That's only scalable up to a certain degree, but after this you need sharding and you need this decentralized and scalable infrastructure. And obviously we also learned our lessons. So we have been here for some time now. We are, I think some people call this even the dinosaurs or something like this in the market, even though it's not so long actually. So yeah, we learned our lessons. We learned that, for example, our tech stack, you could use it for everything, but most people don't want to use it for everything. They just want to deploy whatever idea comes to their mind as quickly as possible, and it was way too complex. You don't want to swap out the consensus mechanism for certain things and things like this. So everyone uses Solidity smart contracts right now. So we also try to catch up there to a certain degree and make sure that everything that can be deployed on other networks is easily deployed here. And on top, we have the sales pitch to enterprise customers where we can actually provide the scalability. It's good that we don't have any meme coins. It's good that we try to be as decentralized as possible, because users might not care about decentralization. They might just want to swap meme coins in milliseconds. But enterprises and more established brands, they need to care. they don't want to have any downtime, and they don't want to rely on a single entity to basically shut down their business at some point.
Right. So when you talk about the scalability, you know that Ethereum choose Rollup as their, the way how they scale their network. Do you think that would be they have an upper hand on the competitive advantage over the scalabilities in the long run?
When it comes to scalability, I would definitely say we have the upper hand because we basically have the focus on decentralization from Ethereum, but we moved a lot quicker. We were actually able to implement sharding and not kind of give up on it at some point. So that's something to be aware of. And we provide this solution that basically fulfills the entire stack. So we have the relay chain, we have the components for the roll-ups, the parachains. So that's also a certain advantage there.
Yeah, so, you reminds me of one of our sponsor. So they came to us and said, we are going to launch our project. And then we have the, ice-breaking meeting. And during the ice-breaking meeting, I never thought they built on the Polkadot, because they are building like the rate staking product. It's back to last year when the, Eigenlayer just came and all the rate staking is getting hype. And I asked him, so which chain you are building? So my answer, my personal answer is I'm building on Ethereum or blah blah. But he said we're building on the Polkadot, and that made me silence for about 5 seconds and ask why. And because in my mind, Polkadot for us, because none of us are the tech background. So for us, we just think Polkadot is quite hardly to use, because when we talk with other techs, they always said the Solidity is quite easy and even the Rust is okay and they can build. And for the Polkadot, they said they are really great, but it's really hard, really hard to use. And so when we talk to them and I ask why you're building on the Polkadot, and he mentioned, when what's the Ethereum want to solving at this moment, the Polkadot already solved. So we don't find any problem to using the Polkadot, but because we are good at tech, and we can read all the tech doc, so we know how to build on the Polkadot. So that is the first time I know, the Polkadot on the scalability side has that great heads up than other ecosystem.
Yeah, so two things there. So one thing you mentioned is basically Solidity, what I said, Ethereum compatibility, and that's something we also noticed. Like there are so many tools available, and we have this focus on the, I think in Ethereum terms, it's now base native rollup. So we have something called the Asset Hub, which will be fully EVM compatible. Or Ethereum compatible, and ensure that you can just deploy your Solidity smart contract, and all the regular tools and block explorers and so on will exist there, and it will ultimately also makes it easier for custodians to integrate, for exchanges and so on. So to provide this easy access point. But then, as you mentioned, there are some customers, mostly established enterprises. Like one big use case right now is Mythical Games on Polkadot that basically has this upcoming FIFA game and so on, that are willing to put additional effort into it, like potentially customize their chain, and on the other hand have actually this requirement of, hey, if there's the next World Cup and we have a game for this, there might be millions of users that suddenly want to use this, and it needs to be scalable, and it needs to be handle all these transactions without suddenly, I don't know, the cost shouldn't go up like crazy, and things like this.
Yeah, that is really makes sense, because currently if you say every chain here is everybody's competing on the TPS, every single one. Yeah. So they just thinking, well, we have to win on the speed, and we have to win on the cost things. And yeah, back to the project part. So you are responsible for all the grant. So would you mind walk us through a typical grant decision? So what makes you say, oh, that's the one we have to invest in them? Yeah.
first give you a little bit more background on this. So we used to be, before there was the on-chain treasury, the on-chain funding, we were basically the entity that supported all the open source software development and research and the different clients and so on in our ecosystem. Now, with the on-chain treasury being available, we focus more and more on startup focused grants, on the BD grants, where we actually support certain integrations and so on, where we also often work together with companies that don't necessarily want to be fully transparent, at least in this initial stage. On the other hand, everyone that just wants to develop open source software and so on, we have this almost solved with our on-chain treasury. And when it comes to these startups or teams that now want to create something, I would say the most important thing is usually the motivation. Like, there are so many teams that start with one idea and get some market feedback and completely shift to another idea and so on. And the most important aspect is this team actually motivated? Do they want to deploy something? Do they want to go the extra mile to get users and so on? Or is this more a team that, I don't know, previously received a grant from Sui. Before this, they received a grant from Solana. Then they received a grant from Ethereum and so on.
And it's Grant Hunter.
Yeah, Grant Hunter, that's kind of people.
Or teams that simply just deliver, and once it's done, they switch to the next thing. So that's something to be aware of in the space.
Right. So could you share some? Oh, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I do have one question. Some of our friends, they are founders. And when we're discussing with them to for the regular heads up or the recap, and they always fighting to find a PMF. And even for some project, they do have the good visions, but it's really hard to find a PMF that's current stage. And they have to shift for some, it's reality. Other than they want to have another round of the fundings and they're going to burn out. So for those kind of the project, how do you think? So they have the original idea and then they work really hard of it, but it's really hard to find a PMF. So they iterate for another ideas. What kind of those kind of the team, whether you're going to invest in them again or say no, it's not good motivation.
Generally, usually nobody has an idea and that's it. Basically, that's the 100 million idea and you're going to get rich with this. You need to constantly adapt and change. And the most important thing I would say is get user feedback as quickly as possible, or test your hypothesis in some form as quickly as possible. And we also, to be honest, a lot of people in the space, including us, we had more the approach, hey, this is the coolest tech, let's develop it, let's make it even more scalable and so on. But yeah, we also need to have this focus on users and change the approach if necessary. Yeah.
So what are those projects that came to your mind since we asked you this question? What are those success stories? Is there anything that draw your attention? Amazing founders, amazing idea. They found the PMF and now they grow really well. Is there any projects you want to share with us?
Yeah, sure. Basically, a lot of teams that came out of our ecosystem or that are still active started with grants. One of them is, for example, Moonbeam Foundation, that Ethereum project that exists. Then another one is A-Star, previously called Stake Technologies, with Sota that from Japan, that basically started as a parachain. Now they have their Optimism chain together with Sony, but we are still talking to them and have still a very good relationship with them and things like this. So there are a bunch, and then you also see in the US market we initially worked super closely with Block Deep and others, or Block Demon, that's a staking company that is now super big and That's nice. And obviously in our ecosystem, there's right now Mythical is pretty big with the FIFA game, as I mentioned, Frequency and others. So yeah, it's super interesting to see over time also from the original grant application where some of these teams had completely different visions, and then later seeing what came out of it.
Right. So what kind of the narratives you guys are focusing on, especially in the Polkadot and Kusama as well? So I think they have different version.
Yeah, so generally, I already told you we have more this BD startup focus right now as the Web3 Foundation, and we are pretty much focused right now on the entertainment sector, where basically Web2 companies that now want to integrate Web3 and they potentially want to deploy their own chain. They have a lot of users that need to be onboarded. So that's something we are focused on, and where we think also ultimately we can create network effects around it. So because as a layer one, or sometimes we say Polkadot is a layer 0 because it combines all these chains. I think it's ultimately important to create these network effects, like having different football clubs, for example, that all benefit from each other on chain and make it difficult for them to switch to another ecosystem. Yeah.
So, wow, this is entertainment.
Yeah, entertainment is pretty big, where we see a lot of interest. And yeah, I think a lot of companies in general have realized when the US president can launch a meme coin, they can also now more closely into the space and actually deploy products. Whereas in the past, it was a few years ago, it was a lot about, I don't know, marketing campaigns or doing a proof of concept, but never really putting the transactions on chain. Now it's actually teams and companies are interested in actually leveraging this technology.
So for our audience, if you guys, any of you is working on any entertainment sectors, just please go for the Polkadot.
Yeah, so there might be some interesting teams also that you can benefit from that we will announce soon. So yeah.
Right. So now let's talk about the other topics we really want to know. Since you already mentioned the scalability, and I think the other keywords for Polkadot is the interoperability. So could you briefly tell us what's interoperabilities in Polkadot's perspective?
Yes. So basically something that we also see in now other layer 2s in Ethereum and so on slowly coming, that all these layer 2s, they need to talk to each other. And ideally, it's not just a bridge, because there are certain security concerns when it comes to bridging and so on. And it's not just, I need to first get out of layer 2.1 and need to wait 28 days and need to so basically it should be a seamless experience between these different chains, and it should be relatively quickly so that the users even don't notice it and can ultimately leverage different applications on different chains without even noticing it. And obviously the fact that we have this one relay chain and all the parachains combined, and we don't have these different competing layer 2s, helps a lot in creating standards for this and creating transaction formats and so on that can easily be adapted by everyone in the ecosystem.
So that means, in the Polkadot ecosystem, so everybody, so each parallel chains, and they can seamlessly talk to each other to share the information and transfer the asset. So that is all the seamlessly can do that?
Yeah, exactly. And we have something that we called XCM, cross-chain messaging, and the cross-chain messaging format and so on, so to make this possible. And you can even interact and leverage different, so you can do nested calls. I don't know, I want to swap on XYZ and I want after this stake my assets on this other chain and things like this. So this is possible. It was again bit too complex and too powerful at the beginning, but I think we are getting there. So yeah, just to add here, sorry for interrupting.
Yes, go ahead.
Is that we, on top of this, now we have this fully EVM compatible asset hub, as I said before, and so on. So basically, you can do everything the same way as on every other chain, and then on top interact with the Web2 companies and so on that will release parachains. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that means if some protocols in the Ethereum ecosystem, and because the Polkadot is EVM compatible, so I can connect both?
So on the one hand, we have this Ethereum compatible layer. On the other hand, where you can just deploy your Solidity smart contract. On the other hand, we also already have trustless bridges, but we will also bring the typical names. So we have one bridge that we put a lot of effort into it, also from a security perspective, which is Snowfork. But there again, we had a little bit the issue that I would say users don't care so much about all these security assumptions. So this is highly relevant for enterprises now and so on, whereas users, they are fine with using layer 0, wormhole, XLR, and so on. So yeah.
Cool. So for another very powerful things is about AI. So, the way everybody's crazy about AI agent. Just a moment before. So for the AI, so are you seeing some meaningful coverage between the AI and blockchain, or does Polkadot or the Kusamas waiting to focus or have some AI compatible as well?
Yeah. So in general, I see two interesting things there. On the one side, we mentioned entertainment. Where we have now, for example, Moopa.com that will soon release a parachain that is a music company that basically uses AI to generate music, puts the license on chain and things like this. So I see this happening, basically using some AI together with something else and putting it on chain. So that's super interesting, and I think there will be more and more companies that leverage AI to a certain degree. And then there's obviously this whole chain abstraction thing. Basically, you can you just tell your AI or your solver or whatever you call it, hey, I want to have Bitcoin, I want to lend against it, I want to, I don't know, also buy some real world assets on another chain, but I don't really care about how it will work. I just tell my chatbot or my app to do it, and then this AI will make it all happen in ideally the best way possible. So there's a huge opportunity, and I would say this is also a big opportunity for Polkadot, because if we get to this stage, then it actually matters what is the most secure chain, what has the cheapest costs, and not just because it's, I don't know, USDC transfers are subsidized or something like this, but actually transaction costs. And basically where's it decentralized and so on. And this AI again will at least I think is a little bit more like an enterprise that needs to manage a lot of assets and so on, and will care about these things and won't care so much about the fact that maybe it's pretty difficult from a user perspective to do things on this, or there isn't a great, beautiful UI or things like this. Yeah.
So will you say that AI, AI plus crypto will be one of the focal point for the Web3 foundations, that, no matter for Polkadot or for Kusama, that your foundation will actively seeking and scouting for different AI and crypto projects and then try to convince them to get on board? Is that one of your objectives?
So in generally, it's pretty interesting. There are super useful combinations of AI and crypto, and having all this data on chain that AI can leverage. But I also want to point out there are a lot of use cases where AI and blockchain are combined, where at least I'm not fully convinced. Like If you train AI, then you need to have certain centralized data centers that have extremely high bandwidth, a lot of computation and so on, that is in the hands of very few. And doing this in a decentralized way is difficult. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
That's true. Indeed.
So remain the decentralized is the priority.
Yeah, I think we will see this more and more now. I think enterprises, applications that potentially leverage AI for cross-chain transactions and so on, they need to care. If you manage a lot of funds for the users and so on, you need to take into consideration, hey, what's the most secure block space out there? What's the cheapest? How do you interact with these things? And it's no longer, hey, let's do this as quickly as possible and hope the price goes up.
So let's talk about DeFi. DeFi it's already proved product market fit, right? So Ethereum, they already proved that the DeFi is like really prosper and like still evolving. And for this year, I think the other narrative is the BTC5. So now we can already see that BTC seems that creating another hype for their, rolled up, layer two, also talk about scalability. So how about Polkadot? Because we saw the news last year that the Polkadot DAO actually allocated $3 million for DeFi growth. And you guys said you will reinvent the DeFi. So actually, what's your plan and what are the process now?
Yeah, I want to be fully transparent here. So we are certainly, when it comes to TVL and all these metrics, we are far behind. And the idea here is making it as easily as possible to integrate, making sure that all the top tier projects are deployed on Polkadot, that you can benefit from all the liquidity, all the DeFi projects that exist out there. But we won't be the top tier DeFi project, at least in the near future. There are others that are way more focused on this. And to be honest, it's also, for example, it's hard to compete with someone like Coinbase that has the entire stack in this regard. And but we want to catch up and make sure that everything that is deployed on a lot of other ETH2 layer 2s and so on is also deployed on Polkadot and exists, so that if you develop this entertainment project or whatever, you can easily leverage what is out there and what is great, while still benefiting from all the scalability and cheap transaction costs.
So actually, I want to ask you a follow-up questions. It's just not about DeFi, since you already mentioned several times entertainment, and you didn't use the word GameFi. So can I assume that you guys are focusing on finding a different product market fit than the traditional or the regional GameFi sectors? So since you said entertainment.
Yeah, so I'm saying entertainment. So we see two pretty big or interesting things. It's one right now is basically around Mythical Games with FIFA, where this opens a lot of doors, like on the one side, on the gaming side more, but also on the football, soccer side, different clubs and so on, fan loyalty programs and things like this, where we see real interest, where they actually see value in it from a marketing side, where they actually have case studies and so on. And it's not just, hey, let's do another proof of concept, but it's actually about bringing users on chain. And then there's also the music industry, ticketing and things like this, where we see a lot of interest.
Oh, so you see it from a bigger scope, not just simply from a game.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a little bit like more these Web2 companies, for example, app developers and so on, that are simply, I think they will be the ones that now slowly adapt Web3. Whereas some of the, for example, healthcare, it will be super difficult for them to basically make this shift into Web3. I myself worked in the healthcare space before, or my startup was partly focused on it. And there are a lot of things that make a lot of sense, but there are so many legal aspects, so many privacy and other things that will make it very difficult for some of these companies to basically adapt the technology.
So can I, I'm currently at this point, I'm kind of understand what Polkadot or the Web3 Foundation's vision. So you guys are not competing with each other, just like we're competing with the DeFi, we're competing with TVL. You're more like, you mentioned a lot of times on the Web 2 and institutions. So you guys are working on onboarding all the Web 2, at least the proper case that can be onboarding on the blockchains, rather than we're building another DeFi Legos and to pump all the bubbles.
Yeah, I would fully agree here. So that's at least with Polkadot where our focus currently lies on, and also something to be aware of. In generally, I would say it's almost easier, like if you have already users and you want to integrate Web3 compared to a lot of these Web3 startups that now try to get users, and it will be hard for them. To mention, for example, is like social networks. We have Frequency. Not a lot of people know about it, but they are in discussions with a lot of social networks where they have now the technology stack for these social networks to enable them to leverage Web3. And they are in discussions with almost all the big social networks for the integration. And I think this is a lot more promising compared to creating a new social network that now needs to somehow convince users to stop using Facebook, TikTok, and so on, and instead start using this completely new platform just because it's suddenly decentralized or something like this. So
Yeah, actually, that is quite makes sense. Last year, Melbourne's marathon, Coinbase sponsored Melbourne Marathon last year, and they, every marathon runners, they have their personal records, and every personal records, Coinbase give them the wallet and mint them as an NFT, and that is quite easy way, and they get really good feedback. So everybody is seamlessly using the Web3, and they think that is really memorable because my personal records is only matter to me, to myself, and then that is can live longer, maybe longer than my life.
Yeah, agree. And I think ideally the end users in most cases shouldn't even know that they are using Web3 technology. So I had some, when it comes to onboarding and so on, creating multiple wallets, remembering the private keys and so on. That's, I think, a pain that a lot of people in the space had.
It is. Remember the fire? Remember a lot of private key being destroyed by the fire. So yeah, it's really a pinpoint.
In my experience, actually, it's often like people care so much about security that they don't get attacked or something like this and lose their private key, but they actually forget about it. Like they had this old Bitcoin key and lost a lot of Bitcoin because they don't remember, and it was so super secure that it was even too secure for them. Yeah.
So let's back to some money questions. So you just mentioned about the TVLs. You're probably gonna far away behind with other protocols, but we know the Polkadot's ETF. It's already being requested, and some on behalf, I think it's Grayscale and 21 Share. So if the dot price is always going to be like no pump and the TVL always behind with others, so is that going to affect the ETFs, or you guys don't care?
In general, we usually try to always more care about long term and not so much about getting the price quickly up and down again or something like this. So it's always more about making long-term sure that we bring more users on the chain, that more people adopt Polkadot. Ultimately these ETFs are obviously a great way to get more exposure to the market and maybe increase overall the interest in the space. And I think the reason I don't know why these companies to choose to create ETFs for Polkadot. I would assume one reason is basically that we always try to be decentralized, focused on it, try to be compliant, not too much hype and so on. And therefore.
So will you worry about the centralization? Because I think since the BTC filed the ETF, they got passed, and then followed by Ethereum, Solana, and even Avalanche. There are rumors talking about that. Since all those institutions now can buy the tokens, will you worry about the centralizations in the future?
So I think from a token side, I don't think it's an issue. At least right now, I don't think we will soon have a situation where I don't know, there's one big token holder that owns all these tokens. I think it will be continue to be decentralized, but I think decentralization in general is a topic that a lot of other teams underestimate, and right now it's not the thing that people want to necessarily see, but I think this will change. So enterprises care more about it. They will take this into consideration simply because they have to do due diligence. They have to make sure that whatever they deploy also works in a couple of years from now. And sadly, also in the current world, there's obviously the risk that, at some point there might happen something really bad that actually makes people aware again that it does matter.
Okay, so let's forget about all the money things. Yeah,
that's usually a good recommendation. Ignore the market and.
Yeah, it's all about market things. Yeah, let's forget all about markets. So we are here to talk about for the long term visions. And so David, would you mind give us some response for some most incorrect you've learned about Polkadot and the Kusamas on social media?
Like for instance, like Vivian already mentioned, one of our friends said, Polkadot's phenomenal, but it's hard to use. Do you think it's a stereotype or that's the truth?
Yeah, or you change.
You evolve, something like that.
Yeah,
I think I agree to it with a certain degree. It definitely was harder to use compared to some of the other solutions. Now, obviously, when there's all the Ethereum tools available that everyone is using, then it's basically the same user experience. But originally it was harder to use. It was harder to understand. We had a lot of technical founders, a lot of technical people that made it sometimes difficult to follow them and weren't the best when it comes to marketing and promoting these things and so on. So that's something I agree with. Then there are obviously a lot of cases where people still, I don't know, they read a headline, they misunderstand it. Something that happened, for example, in the past was there was a report about this on-chain treasury spending that was shared in a lot of media outlets, and it was more changed to Web3 Foundation spending crazy amount of money on all these projects and almost bankrupt and so on. And it wasn't us as a foundation. We weren't even part of this report. It was the on-chain treasury, which already improved a lot. And obviously something to be aware of is when you try to create this decentralized treasury, then obviously there are some things that don't work out and other things that work out. Whereas when you keep everything centralized and in control and you don't share any data, then nobody can report about it.
Okay, so actually, will you actually fly to different places to meet all the developers and community members? Do you travel a lot?
Yeah, so I was in Toronto, I think last week and so on. So January.
Consensus, right?
Yeah, good, exactly. Happy to always meet people. I think something that helped me in general is that before I joined Web3 Foundation, I have this experience of actually creating something with our SDK substrate. I used to work on the other side, so I know sometimes how difficult it is to keep up with changes, with that things change, that as a startup, not everything is set in stone and so on. So yeah.
So I think, Web3 Foundation will host an event, right? It's coming. Could you tell us what was that?
Yeah, it's the Web3 Summit. Is usually our biggest event. It was one of the events. I think the first Web3 Summit was in 2018 or something like this, when I actually decided to join Web3 Foundation, and it was a super great event with a lot of now big founders of different ecosystems. I remember actually that I talked with Anatoly from Solana there and so on. So it's a super great event to meet different teams that are working. And usually it's also the focus is of not chilling your project and just tell everyone, please invest. But actually it's more about the technical discussion, what's going on in the space, the culture and so on. So yeah.
So where it will be?
It's in Berlin, in the Funkhaus. It's a pretty famous place there. That's
I know that place. I used to study in Berlin, so yeah, it's a really crazy place. But yeah, so
it has some history basically, and it reminds you that decentralization actually might be a good
means
idea.
a lot.
Yeah.
So I will put the link on our show notes. So if any of our listeners really want to go there, and you can click the link and join the events. Right. So next one, it's about yourself, right? So I know crypto world it's super stressful and under pressure, and especially when you talk with different people, like back to back. So how would you relax yourself? How you keep yourself chill and sane to make decisions?
Yeah. That's a very good question. So I personally started to run a lot. So yeah, I'm running quite a bit, and you see the Apple Watch and the Whoop. So I'm now pretty fitness oriented, and I enjoy this. Basically, I need from time to time. I just need to go running, not listening to anything, and just relax. But I agree, it's a challenging space. There are so many news every day. Things change. Then it's sometimes hard to deal with the community because, as we discussed before, if the price goes up, everyone is happy. If the price goes down, everyone complains. So yeah. In the end, I think I also enjoy it quite a lot. You meet a lot of interesting founders, teams that have interesting ideas, that do something new, and yeah, I wouldn't want to work in a more traditional.
Yeah, everybody who works in the Web3, they're never gonna go back. Never. And we are running as well, but we're just starting. But we're running for play tennis.
then if you continue to be in the space, it will be.
Yeah, you have to find somewhere. So you always have to find somewhere to recharging yourself. Yeah. So let's talk about some future and visions. So just use your imaginations. So what does the Web3 Foundation going to look like in 2030 if everything goes right? Everything goes on plan.
In this space, that's almost, 40 years from now.
Yeah, it's like forever.
Yeah. But I think ideally is what's going to happen is what I mentioned a little bit earlier, is that basically Polkadot is able to survive and to continue to grow and so on without basically any help from the Web3 Foundation or any coordination on our side. And we are ultimately no longer necessary. That said, that doesn't mean that we won't be there and still help and contribute and actually try to push the boundaries of the space. And there's still a lot of things to do when it comes to scaling now with onboarding all these enterprises and companies and yeah.
Okay, so how about the challenges and all those difficulties you are encountering or you facing? Are there any for the Web3
Yeah.
Foundation?
In general, in the space, there are always something is always going on or happening, but yeah, I think right now I'm pretty optimistic. I actually am not sure, you probably don't see it, but I have a bull over me here, so I'm optimistic about the future, and I think we will see more and more teams adapt this technology and ultimately get rid of some of the monopolies that exist where we pay way too much or we are in control of a single entity and so on. Yeah.
Cool. So I know, Polkadot is definitely going to looking for a lot of the builders to building on the Polkadot or the Kusama. So if for someone's, especially for our audiences who are the builders or the founders, for them who's considering to building on the Polkadot or Kusama, and what kind of advice you're going to give them?
So basically, yeah, if you are an early stage startup, feel free to use Solidity, feel free to use all the tools that exist and get product market fit and get this user experience. And you can also use Polkadot for this. For the more established companies, it's worth leveraging Polkadot SDK and basically create your own parachain. And we are happy to help and potentially also put you in contact with the right developer companies and so on that can basically do the entire integration and help you with it.
Okay, so now here comes the really important questions, and this question is, asked by our listeners. To the Chinese-speaking communities, you guys have any events, hackathons, anything that you guys will host in the future? Or I mean, this year's. Well, if there's any, what's the plan and what are those milestones you want to achieve?
Yes, so in generally something to be aware of. We traditionally also had a lot of Chinese investors and people interested in the protocol and so on. And there are a couple of events that now are also hosted by the community, basically. And if you think you need to host a Polkadot event, you can always go to the treasury and request money for it. And basically that's going because it's the world is so big and so on. We are obviously not the experts in every region, in every vertical and so on. And that's why the on-chain treasury is such a great tool because they are the experts, can actually request funding and get something started there. And we have Sub-Zero, Polkadot Decoded, that is basically, it happened also all over the world, also in Shanghai in the past and so on. So yeah, there are different places. And
so for our builders, if they want to get in touch with the Polkadot or the Kusama team, how they can get in touch and to talk about how they're going to get help from the foundations or from the community?
Yeah, right now we try to also help a little bit with this, and we have on our website web3.foundation, we have a funding and support site where we basically start listening. So we already have quite a few projects there, but different funding mechanisms in our ecosystems where you can get money, different support programs. We will add VCs there and so on. So basically to make it easier to navigate your way in this decentralized ecosystem. And then obviously you can also always reach out to us and ask questions there. So
cool. We'll put all the link in the show notes. So if anyone who's interested, just to go to the website and find, and we believe you can find what you want.
Okay, here comes to the last part of our interview. So we prepared 3 questions for you to answer. Just like a quick answer will be fine, right? So first of all, what's your favorite blockchains other than Polkadot and Kusama?
my favorite blockchain, I would say it's more the combination of different chains. Like it's not one chain.
What's the combination?
You are so care. You want to piece them off.
No. I think in general in this space we are about decentralization. There are different projects. What matters is that they together generate this network.
Okay, cool. We'll let you go. You're really clever. Okay. So the next one is quite easy. So most overrated and underrated crypto trend.
Crypto chain?
The crypto trend. So the narratives.
Crypto trend, the narratives.
Overrated, maybe AI right now because it's pretty hyped in general. Underrated, that's a good question. I don't think anything comes to mind. There are there are a lot of opportunities. I always see overrated. I have a lot of things like real world assets are super hyped in the US right now, but it's not like suddenly everyone can put everything on chain. It's more like these big players will come into the market. Then there was this DeFi. Basically where suddenly people said we can develop trucks with on-chain funding that wasn't super promising in my opinion and so on. So I can name some hype things that I think are overrated, but underrated, I think if you look into other things, there are so many opportunities and so much.
So what about in the entertainment sectors? So you saw a lot of the.
All right, that's maybe a good point for the general audience. It might be something that is currently underrated, and for me, I'm talking to so many companies and so on that are actually interested. So and I see this interest, but yeah, it's currently not publicly discussed a lot.
Which sector are you most interested in the entertainment sector?
I'm personally into sports.
I see.
So does it mean like ticketing or what?
And not necessarily only ticketing. So ticketing is one part, but things like fan loyalty programs and so on. And not only because of NFTs, but actually there are real use cases like where the fans can interact with it, can potentially even play games around it. The companies behind it get insights into their fan base and so on from this data. So there are interesting use cases there, but I don't want to get into too much detail here.
I personally I'm more interested in the movie part. I think. Yeah, I'm quite interested in movie because movie have the IP, have the ticketing, and also movie can be the game, right? That's just like Game of Thrones,
Yeah, there are actually a few gaming companies that also have licenses from popular movies that are now coming on chain. So more and more things like this happens, and in the gaming space, obviously, you have this issue with the distribution channel that there are a few big players that basically control these distribution channels and have this huge fees and so on. And the blockchain and Web3 might be a way to finally get around this.
And the last question, David, for you is: if you didn't get into Web3, what do you think that you will be?
That's a great question.
Healthcare?
Healthcare, yeah.
Probably some engineer at some German company or something like this. So I actually studied industrial engineering way back, and he might be working for, I don't know, one of the car companies or something like this.
So do you think you make a right decision to get into Web3?
I think so. So I was lucky that in the past, when I was working at one company, it was actually a solar energy company. They had this crisis mode and basically really wanted to do something and change a lot of things. And this is something I enjoy. Whereas if I work for a company where you don't see any progress, I think I wouldn't like it. But I actually want to generate or have this impact and do something. Yeah, but it's an interesting question. I might, after the interview, think a little bit more about it.
That's good.
That's good. Cool. Thank you, David. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And you give me a lot of insight about Polkadot and Kusama. So you really raised a lot of the points and insight that I never thought before. And because most of the chains or most of the things we're more focusing on the price, and everybody like the price pump, but yeah, and especially for all the investors, they are more focusing on the price, on the short-term price. But for the long-term investors, we know we have to find the values, and that value is definitely sometimes the value is not show up on the price, and sometimes the value everybody need to dig up. So thank you so much, David, and I hope we're not offense you for some questions.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for the great questions. I now need to think about some of them after the interview. And
Okay, great. Thank you. So thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed our conversation. And if you have any comments, please let us know, and we will pass it to David. So I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next episode. Bye.
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 Taught me to sing, makes my life worthwhile. How that music gets me high, brings tears to my eyes. My hips are swaying side to side, my lungs they